Hello, my sweet, beautiful tarot loves. This is Elise with Wild Moon Woman, and I will be doing days 19 through 24 of Ethany's 31 Days of Tarot Challenge. So I am just having the most magnificent lazy Sunday. I've been cleaning and decluttering and reading and going through my decks, reorganizing books. It has been amazing. I love it. So I am excited to sit down with you guys and do this video. So the first question is rituals, what we do before, during, and after a reading. So my main things that I do are before a reading. I don't really have any rituals during a reading per se, and after a reading I don't have anything specific I do. Sometimes I might cleanse the deck with sage or whatever after, but pretty much it's just I shuffle the deck a little bit and I'll put it away. But before a reading, I spend about 15 to 20 minutes in meditation, and as I said in the video about choosing decks, this is where I'll really marinate on the question and the energy of the question and the energy of the person from their email or if I've talked to them, and I actually will see the reading unfolding in my mind. I'll usually see what decks I want to use with it, and I don't know, I just really like to tap into the energy of the person and kind of get connected to them on a spiritual level before I do the reading. If I'm reading for myself, I don't really do that. I don't really meditate before a reading. I just will take a moment to calm and center and ground myself. And then also before I start, I will shuffle the decks that I'm going to use, and I'll usually shuffle them for a good 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on how long I feel like doing it. Yeah, I feel like shuffling the deck and thinking about the question is very essential to my process. I also will put on usually these 3 oils. They're by Miracle Botanicals, and you can look them up online. They're chakra oils. A lady in Hawaii makes these, and they just have the most beautiful energy, and I love them. So I put the heart on my heart chakra, I put voice on my throat chakra, and I put vision on my third eye chakra. And for me, scent is a very powerful experience, and it really grounds and connects me, and just the act of anointing my chakras kind of activates those for me and gets me in touch with them and just puts my attention towards them. So I want to give my readings from the most loving place. I want to speak clearly and honestly, and I want to be connected to what the guides have to say. So that's why I use these 3 in particular. And then I will pick my crystals, and I usually have a rose quartz of some kind, just for love and compassion for the person that I'm reading for. And then I'll pick other crystals depending on the reading. I don't always bring crystals in, and sometimes I'll even have them off to the side and won't even mention them, but sometimes I just want them there for their energy for me and my connection. And then I also light my working candle, which is a beeswax candle that I love. Beeswax for me is very heart chakra, very sacred, grounding, centering energy, which I love. And then I will also burn my Palo Santo or sage, but usually lately it's been Palo Santo. And that's it. That's my rituals. And then favorite pop culture reference of tarot. So there's a show called Witches of East End. It's not Witches of Eastwick the movie. It's called Witches of East End. And it was canceled after 2 seasons, but I found it on Netflix a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago. And it is so magical and witchy. It's about 2 sisters and their mom and their aunt who are all witches. And the sisters, in the beginning of the show, have just found out that they're witches, and they have these powers that they didn't know they had. And the mother and the aunt read tarot, but they do it in such a sacred way. Only they can do the readings. They don't use a traditional deck. It's a mixture of Rider-Waite and something that doesn't even exist. It's cute. And then they do this like modified Celtic cross spread. Whenever they do a reading, they always do the same spread. And it's basically like the cross part of the Celtic cross without the 4 cards on the side. But they don't read it like that. They read it like intuitively. At least that's what it looks like in the show. And it is like so magical and so just fun. I was so excited to find that show and to see them using tarot in that way, and like the predictions that they made and how witchy it was. And even me and my sister started to do that spread with each other. And it's not like a specific spread, it's nothing special, but just we were both watching the show at the same time, and we would get together and like lay out the cards like they did and read them kind of like the way they did. And that was really fun. So that was my favorite. The question 21, how do I work with guidebooks? So when I'm reading for other people, I hardly ever use a guidebook. The only exception is like if I'm doing a oracle card pull at the end, and the oracle guidebook is a really good guidebook, and I want the person to get the message from the guidebook specifically, I will read to them out of the guidebook. One example is the Sacred Creators Oracle Guidebook. If I pull a card for them at the end with this deck, I will definitely read out of the book because I feel like it has so much energy and beautiful messages to give. But otherwise, I'm going to be using decks that I read intuitively, or I read just based on my own knowledge of the tarot and, you know, how I would normally do a tarot reading. For myself, I do tend to use guidebooks a lot more because I tend to use decks that like I really love the guidebooks. I am a person that like I love guidebooks. I love hearing the author's perspective. I love it when they're written in a beautiful, poetic way. Like one I forgot to bring out. One of my favorites is the Marielle Tarot guidebook. And I just love the way she writes in here. I love all the different mythologies she brings in. I love her writing. To me is very poetic and deep and profound. And so for me, when I read with the Marielle, I am reading, I'm that part of that experience for me is the guidebook. So when I do readings for myself, I will tend to use decks that I have that experience with and that I really enjoy the guidebook. Another one is the Dreams of Gaia. I like to read out of the guidebook. I just got the Cosmos Tarot and Oracle, so I'm going to be working with this one a lot. I like the Fountain Tarot guidebook. I don't use it often, but sometimes when I like want to look up the little key phrase that they have, I'll use this one. The Serpent Fire Tarot guidebook is one of my favorite guidebooks of all time. It's just little, but it's so beautifully written. I've talked about it before. It has mantras, it has keys, it has the awesome like little phrases for each card, like Page of Cups is emotionally free. The World is cosmic union. The Devil, sexual excitation. So I just really like those key phrases, and I love the way this is written. So this is another one along with the Marielle that I always read the guidebook. And other decks that I feel like the guidebook is like so integral to the system is Sacred Creators Oracle. Such a good guidebook. Oh my God. This could be like a standalone book. Like if you don't even use the deck, you could read this and get so much out of it. It kind of reminds me of like Rise Sister Rise or Light is the New Black, where you could flip open to any chapter and read it by itself and get a standalone message. The Sacred Geometry cards, I almost always use the guidebook. And the Mayan Oracle, which I mentioned in one of the other videos in this series. Oh, this is such a beautiful deck, and it is such a beautiful guidebook. And the cards themselves are not cute. They're just like so basic and standard. But the reason that this deck shines is because of the oracle and the information in here, and just like, oh my God, it's like so spiritual and beautiful. So certain decks are guidebook decks for me, and I will always, and also like the Margaret Peterson, that's another amazing guidebook. So I will tend to always read the guidebooks with those. But general like day-to-day readings where I'm doing my daily draws, or I'm like just doing like, oh, what should I do about this situation, or whatever kind of other reading I would normally do, I don't typically use the guidebook. I'll just read how I normally read with my intuition and my knowledge. So that's that. So decks that are personal use decks only. I don't really think I have a deck that like I would say that I will never use this for another person. I have decks that I tend to use more just for myself, but if I feel drawn to use a certain deck for someone, I will use it no matter what deck it is. One deck that I typically use only for myself is the Andara Oracle cards. This is just like a really personal, beautiful deck to me. It's like, it's actually, it feels like a spirit friend. When I first got it, I think it was like 2 years ago, I was going through a time of having like a lot of anxiety, and this deck I would pull a card from every night, and I felt like the energies were so protective of me and just like so comforting. And I would actually like leave the card that I pulled out by my bed, and I felt like that was like an energy that was like standing there and like guarding me all night long. It's a weird it's a weird thing to say, I know, but that is the experience that I had with this. And then I would also like dream about it. It's just such a beautiful deck. That being said, I would use this for other people, but I just haven't so far. Another deck, I didn't pull any of these out. Sorry guys. Another deck that I have never read for somebody else with, and I can't really see myself doing just because the abstract, like deep nature of the deck is the Tarot of the Crone. But again, I would if I was called to. But this is a very deep deck that I use for a lot of inner work. My God, somebody just ran by my window and scared me. I use this for inner work, and it's just like deeply personal to me, and I've never felt called to use it in a reading, but that's not to say that I would never. The Marielle also to a certain extent, because I don't feel like I can really read with the Marielle very intuitively, even though, you know, I probably could if I wanted to and I tried, but like I said, the book is such an important part of it for me that I probably wouldn't use it for anybody else, because I don't want to just sit there and read out of a book. Like, that's not what I want to do when I give tarot readings. So I've used it maybe like once or twice for other people. And during those readings, I did not read the book, and they were amazing readings as well, just because of like the intuitive flow. But it's just not my preferred way of reading with that deck. I like to read the book, and it's a deck that I usually use for myself during like major transitions and stuff. So it's not one that I usually feel like, oh, I need to read for that person with the Marielle. But yeah, I would read with any of my decks for anybody if I really felt like that's what my spirit was telling me to do. Favorite tarot bags in storage. I have a love-hate relationship with tarot bags because I like them. I think they're pretty and cool, but then I put the deck away and I never bring it out again. So I feel like the bags hide the decks from me. So I prefer to actually keep my decks in their box, which is why I so appreciate good boxes for decks, because they allow me to store them, and then I can look at my shelf and see, oh, there's that deck that I'm looking for. You know what I mean? So I do much prefer to have my decks in a good sturdy box. When the deck doesn't come with a good box, I will put it in a bag, or I'll just have it out on my reading space. I do like wooden boxes. I have 2 wooden boxes. One is for my Pagan Otherworlds, which is in here. I got this at Hobby Lobby for like $6, which is cool. I like the sacredness of wooden boxes, and I only have 2, so I definitely know which decks are in it, and they're like hard to miss, so it doesn't have the problem of bags for me where I like lose decks for a while. The other one that's in a box is the Moon deck, which came with its own box, and I love that one too. Number 24. What deck do you wish existed? I wish there was a Game of Thrones tarot, and actually Amber in Wonderland, who runs the Facebook group For Love of Cards, which is a great group, Amber said that they have a Game of Thrones tarot deck coming out, and I just like peed my pants with excitement. The only deck that comes kind of close to that for me is the Pagan Otherworlds, and it's really like the sword suit. Well, the landscapes especially, I don't know why they remind me of Game of Thrones, but they just do, like the countryside. I don't know, it really does remind me of Game of Thrones, probably because in Game of Thrones they wear a lot of like furs like this and like natural kind of things. The suit of swords especially reminds me of the characters of Game of Thrones. Like this reminds me of Lady Stark, who was Robb Stark's mom. You guys know who she is if you watch that show, but she reminds me of her. This reminds me of Sansa. This reminds me of like the Stark boys, like Robb and Jon Snow, even though the hair color is different. The sword suit, I don't know what it is about them, but it just totally reminds me of them. Here. He totally reminds me of like Ned Stark. I love him. I love him so much. So yeah, this deck comes close to me for being a Game of Thrones deck, but I do wish there was a Game of Thrones deck, and I hope they do it right. I hope they give it justice. I hope it's like something cool like this that's like oil paintings and not like overly modernized or commercialized looking. I hope they really, really do it justice, because if they don't, I'm going to be mad. So I'll do another video probably with the last questions next week, and thank you guys for watching. Bye.